Okay, as you can see on the bench today, there are three mini quads, three 250 or 220 sized mini quads. And I'm going to take a look at them because a lot of people have been asking me about mini quads. And as you know, I've already reviewed the Blackout, and I love that little machine. Lumiere FPV have sent me the QAV 250, which will be reviewed very shortly. And a lot of people have said, what about these cheap Chinese knockoff frames? Are they any good? Should I buy one? So, okay, I went out and I bought one. Actually, I bought several of these cheap Chinese knockoff frames to see if they're actually any good, because, you know, if you're looking at pricing, these are the Rolls Royces of mini quads, and they really do perform well. What if you're on a budget and you want to buy something really cheap that hopefully will work? I mean, how do they stack up? What's the difference? Are they actually a knockoff of the 250 or the Blackout? So that's what I'm going to look at in this video. I'm going to look at this Chinese Carbon mini quad. Is it any good? And is it a QAV 250, or is it a Blackout, or is it something completely different? Okay, both the ones that have arrived so far come in these electrostatic bags. I don't know why. There's nothing in there that's going to get damaged by static electricity. I suspect that they got a really good deal on the bags, and I don't know, they've been heat sealed, but it's not very evenly heat sealed. As you can see, the line along the top, this one I've opened, it's just crap. So these are pretty much kitchen table sellers, I think. Don't expect too much in the way of support, and don't expect too much in the way of a fantastic product. But let's open this one and see what's inside. And to do that, I'll get my fancy knife, and we'll just shake a little bit. Down. This is close to an unboxing, isn't it? But it's not. It's an unbagging, so that doesn't count. I'm allowed to do unbaggings, but not unboxings on RC Model Reviews. Let's have a look at what comes in the kit. Here we go. So this is what you get for your money. There's obviously two boards. These are the bottom boards. Here's the top board. Here are the arms. They look to be 3mm carbon fiber. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are the little feet that nobody uses because they're completely not a waste of time. There's a little stand for the Mobius, your little Mobius mount camera. The holes seem to be slightly different sizes, so quality control again. And then you've got a box of standoffs, bolts, and some little rubber grommet things for vibration isolation on the camera mount. That all seems pretty good. So let's see how long it takes to put this together. What I'll do is I'll just pop it back in the bag so I don't lose any bits. Let's put all the pieces back in the bag, as you do. Can't forget it. Oh yeah, and you get the little camera mount. It's a bit of a bodgy one, not as good as the one on the Blackout, that's for sure. So let's put all those back in the bag, and I'll give the bag a bit of a shake, tip it out again. There we go. Didn't take long to build, did it? I've just knocked this one together very quickly so you can see. But here we go. Things to note. The main differences that I've discovered is it's not the same as a Blackout at all. The pieces are quite different in terms of the shape and size. Well, some pieces are quite different. Let's take an example. Actually, take a look at the arms, for instance. Now, here's one of the Chinese arms. Here's a Blackout, and that's the Chinese frame, so get the Blackout out. Here's a Chinese arm, here's the Blackout. And as you can see, the arm is not only longer, but also the area where the motor mounts is smaller. See that? It's quite small. So the motor isn't going to get as much protection if you have a ding. And that's quite important, because if you're going to use something like a Tiger motor, you know, $40, you don't really want to bung your motor up when you hit a park bench or something. So these arms, the design's not quite as good, and they're longer. They are quite a bit longer. So this is really quite a much, or not that much, but it is a larger mini quad. This is the plate on which your Mobius mounts. It's got little rubber grommets to go in there. But you notice one of these holes is bigger than the other three, and it's the same on the other kit I got. It seems to be, I don't know if it's designed that way or not. Maybe it's so it's easy to get that last grommet in, but I don't know, because if we take this drill bit here, you see it passes through that hole quite easily, but it's just not going into these ones. So obviously that hole is quite a bit bigger. Why? I don't know. And excuse the lighting, but if you look really closely at the way these holes are machined, it's another indicator that this is not quite the same quality as some of the brand name products. You see how the edges of these holes are quite ragged. Generally that means that the tooling has been getting blunt and they haven't changed it. One way to make more money out of this sort of thing is just make your tooling run longer. And people who bought the glow motors, you remember when you used to have nitro motors? Well, a lot of the Chinese versions of those were unreliable in so much as they varied so much from one unit to another. And that was often caused by the fact that the people making them ran their tooling for longer, so they got blunter and the clearances changed, and so you ended up with a machine. One engine that was made with brand new tooling might have run beautifully, but the one that was made with the really worn tooling just before they changed it might not run at all. So yeah, they tend to run. They tend to run their tooling a lot longer if you're making really cheap stuff, and the result is, I mean, this one's quite good, this one on the corner is quite good, but the others, yeah, they're quite ragged. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. I mean, it's a hole is a hole, isn't it? And there's nothing here that requires super precision, so I guess, you know, it's okay. I'm sorry about the background noise in this part of the video, but it's blowing a gale outside. There's a real storm going on. I've got the heater running here, so there's lots and lots of background noise. My apologies. But here we are. I'm putting this Chinese frame together. What I've done so far is obviously I've put the motors. These are the RC timer motors. And the ESCs, again, RC timer ESC, 12 amp ESCs with Simon K software. I've wired the motors directly to the speed controller. To do that, I've just peeled back the heat shrink and soldered the wires directly on. Don't use bullets, don't waste your time. Bullets are just problems, extra weight, and you know the wires are too short to use bullets anyway, really. So I've done that, and it means I've made up 4 arms, the 4 arms, 2 go clockwise, 2 go counterclockwise. So I made the arms up independently, and I used a little servo tester on the system just to make sure the motors were going the right way when I wired them up, and then I've labelled them counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, like that, so that I can make sure everything is working the correct way. Now I've taken the wiring and I've got all the positive wires run together. That's the 4 wires from the ESCs, 4 positive wires from the ESCs, and also a JST connector here, because this is going to power the camera and the video transmitter. It has to come from the battery pack, so I have to include that as well. The flight controller, of course, will be powered from the BECs built into the ESCs, so that's not a problem. So now, as you can see, I've just run the wires together and heat shrunk them. Another piece of heat shrink here just to hold things together. And I'm going to do the same on this side. There are the wires. They are yet to be soldered. So there's 2 negative wires from this end, 2 negative wires from that end, and a negative wire from the JST connector. I'll solder those up now. So there we go, all the wiring is done. I have to admit I made a bit of a botch up the first time because I wired all the ESC wires together and the JST connector, and I thought, great. Then I realized no battery connector, so I had to do it again. So I've got all the black wires, including the wire off to the battery, the XT60 wired together and heat shrunk, all the red wires wired together, heat shrunk. And so now what I can do is, as I say, I put these arms on temporarily, that's why the bolts aren't done up, just so that I could get the wiring laid out properly. Now I've got to remove these bolts, put the bottom plate on, and then bolt it all up again, which will effectively clamp all that wiring in place, and then allow me to get on with the rest of the build. So there you go. Even though we don't have a power distribution board in this, the wiring is reasonably neat and tidy. It's, you know, once we get that plate on there, it's all going to be pushed down and sit between the two. I'm quite happy with that, and now I guess I'll just go ahead and throw that baby on. So there we go, there is the Chinese knockoff mini quad bolted together. As you can see, the wiring is nicely contained within the gap between those 2 plates. The red wires and the black wires, positive and negative. And I have, yeah, there's the battery connector at the back. I may have to shorten that, not sure. I made it longer rather than shorter. Should have really just run the wires and then put the plug on later, but you know, I already had a plug connected to some wires, so I used those. The leads from the speed controllers are a bit long. Now, ideally you would shorten these. So, I mean, why waste, you know, why just have all the extra weight there doing nothing? But in this case, I'm just going to bundle them up and plug them in. They'll go around. Some of them will be too long. The SAC board actually will go in the other way around because this is the back. So being the NAS 32, it has a little arrow on it which points to the front. So it will go this way. So some of these speed controller wires will have to come all the way around to there. That's not too much of a problem. It's pretty straightforward. So yeah, so far the build is going reasonably well. It's not fast though. It's not a quick build like the Blackout would be because of the farting around you have to do with the wires. And trust me, getting the wiring all in place whilst jiggling around with the arms and the bolts, it was a bit of a fart, but I got it done. And if time is more important than, or if you don't have the money, but you do have the time, then this is not a bad option. But if you don't have the time and you've got the money, then buying something that's got a power distribution board in it is going to save you a snot load. And back to the completed frame. Now I built this one up. This is an uber budget Carbon 250 mini quad, and it's uber budget because I've used the really cheap motors from RC Timer. These are what are they, an 1806? Have to look at the side. Yeah, 1806 2300 kV, those motors. The ESCs are 12 amp with Simon K software on them, and I think the total price for those was about $90 US for the 4 motors and 4 ESCs. Pretty cheap, you know. They actually seem to work. I'm going to be doing, of course, a full flight review of this later on, and we'll be comparing the 3 different quadcopters to see how they compare in terms of performance, features, value, and handling. So there we go. I put the little Mobius thing on. You don't get any spare rubber cushions, which is a shame because I've actually wrecked heaps of these in my flying, because every time I have a decent crash, the Mobius rips off and it rips a cushion, or I lose one of the rubber cushions, so vibration dampeners. So you'll have to shell out for some more of those, or you only get a few flights if you're like me. As I say, I've got a FrSky Delta 8 receiver in there, which I've used because it does CPPM, and that means I've only got one lead going from my receiver to the Naze 32 flight controller. Much simpler than having a big wad of servo wires. Receivers that do CPPM are brilliant for multi-rotors. I've using a Turnigy 1.4 battery on the top. This is the Traxxas batteries. They're actually really good. I think the maximum charge rate's like about 10C or something silly. So they're really great because you can charge them up in no time, get flying again if you've only got a few batteries. I've used the little 200 milliwatt video transmitter, which I reviewed before. Hit and miss these things. I've got to say, hit and miss. This one is a good one. No lines, beautiful clear picture. Got another one in another machine. Got lines. What do you do? So as I said in another video, I'm going to pull one of these apart and see if we can fix them up so they're all good. We'll just have to see how that turns out. Running the GMFan 5.3 props like everybody does. And so that's it. It's, it's a pretty straightforward build. It's a pretty... it looks like it's got lots of carbon bling. The arms are like on the Blackout, they bolt on, whereas on the real QAV250, remember this is being pitched as a QAV250 because it says so on the box. Look, it says it on the box. They wouldn't lie. So is it? Let's compare it to the real QAV250. And this is where you'll start to see the difference. Now, the carbon seems to be quite different. This has got a sort of a matte finish. You probably see the satin type finish on the carbon on this. And the carbon on this, of course, has a glossy, shiny finish. Does that make any difference? I've got no bleeding idea. I've got no idea. What I will do, actually, is using these cheap, crap-ass little legs, I'll do some strength testing and just see how strong that carbon is in another video. But let's have a look at the geometry of it and the construction. Well, one thing you notice with the real QAV250 frame is that this bottom piece is all one piece. The arms and the main body are all one piece. They don't bolt on, right? And of course they are 3mm like the other one. So yeah, it's not a QAV250 knockoff, is it? Even though it claims to be, it's not a QAV250. And that becomes apparent too when you actually put them side by side or on top of each other, because when you look at the geometry, and I'll just hand hold my camera here, hang on. Right, I'll turn this all around because it's a bit difficult there. But if I hold this like this and I line up, let's just line up the front motors, you'll notice that the QAV250 is narrower between the motors in the front than this knockoff frame. See that these spacing on the knockoff frame is much wider, and also it's actually narrower in the... So it's going to be interesting to see the comparison in the flying characteristics between the real QAV250 and this little knockoff here. So, yep, and if we look at the Blackout, let's just bring the Blackout into play here because that is another H quad. Here we go. If we do that line up on this one, you'll see the differences are even more dramatic. Try not to show too much of my grubby floor. Here we go. Let's put this on the top. You'll notice now that the knockoff is actually quite a bit wider than the Blackout. In fact, I'll turn this one upside down. Should have choreographed this previously, shouldn't I? Okay, so here we go. That's upside down. Let's put the Blackout on top of it. Now we'll really see the differences. Now you can see, if I move this around a bit more, that the Blackout is quite a bit narrower than the knockoff by quite a bit. It's about 20mm actually, so it's quite a bit narrower. And the spacings, again, the spacings of the Blackout are actually the back to front is about the same, but suffice to say, it's not the same as either frame. It really is a completely different frame. So for the benefit of those who want to know, let's measure these spacings. The front to back spacing is 155mm. This is the Chinese knockoff, 155mm front to back, and across it is, okay, it's 200mm. So it's actually a reverse. It's actually wider than it is long. Whereas if we go to let's go to the QAV, and we'll do the same measurements. Here we've got a front to back spacing of 180 and a side to side spacing of 180. So actually this is an X. This is really an X configuration. The the motor spacing widthwise is the same as lengthwise. So it would have should have equal handling characteristics in terms of flipping forwards or flipping sideways. And what about the Blackout? How does it handle this? I don't want to bend my antenna, so I'll hold this. The Blackout has a horizontal spacing of 175 and a front to back of 135. So the Blackout is wider than it is long as well. Now it's time to measure the weight of these things. What I've done is I've taken the batteries off all of them, and so we've got the basic frame with all the flight controller motors, ESCs. It's all ready to go except for the batteries and the Mobius. So let's see how they compare. Let's start off with the QAV 250 from Luminaire. Here we go. What have we got there? A total of 390 grams roughly. 390 grams. That's pretty light, eh? Not too bad at all. Let's put the Blackout on there. And it's 350 grams. That's actually 40 grams lighter. 40 grams lighter for the Blackout, but it is a smaller quad. It is a noticeably smaller quad when you actually line them up side by side. And let's try the Chinese Special. What are we going to get out of that one? 300, I'll move it so you can see, 360 grams. So it's in the mid-range. And I'm quite amazed at how light that is, to be honest. So that's an interesting observation. So there you have it. There is the Chinese 250 Mini Quad Carbon. And what can I say? Well, it isn't a Blackout, it isn't a QAV. It is built using Blackout type construction techniques, but it's not geometrically, or it's not physically the same size. It's bigger than a Blackout. It's actually bigger than a QAV. So it is a 250. I've seen them advertised as a 220, but they're not. The 250 measure from point to point. In fact, I'll just do it now just to make sure that it is what it says it is. Let's go across there. It's actually a 250 millimeter diagonal. So yeah, it's bigger than the other two. And as I say, you've seen the small issues with machining. You know, that's not a big deal. It just shows you though that they're obviously making these to a price rather than a quality point. And I'll test fly it. We've got to test fly it, make sure it flies properly because the geometry is different. And surprisingly, the geometry does make a difference. You know, you get something a little bit wrong and they don't fly as well as they should. So we'll be comparing this to the other two quads. I've got the full review of the QAV 250 coming up, which I'm sure everyone will want to see. But at this stage, I would say if you're in the market for a mini quad, then if you can afford it, buy a brand name, buy a Blackout or buy a QAV 250, simply because these people have paved the way. They've created this whole market. And the Chinese are now capitalizing on that with these frames, and hey, good on them. I mean, that's what you do in business, isn't it? But if you want people to continue innovating, coming up with new products, exciting new products, you've got to support the people who break the ground, the people who go out there and come up with the ideas. You can buy these, but the Chinese are not going to innovate. They're not going to come up with a fancy, fantastic new design. They're just following the trends. So support the trendsetters. Go and get yourself a Blackout. Go and get yourself a QAV 250. But if you're completely broke, you've got no money at all, then I guess you could spend some money on one of these, put some crap-ass motors on it and fly it around. It's better than nothing. Speaking of prices, I was a Scrooge, as I always am, and I saw these. The only reason I bought these frames was because I was able to get them at a really low price. Now, they seem to go on eBay for anywhere up to 50, 60 bucks. Honestly, 60 bucks for one of those. Why would you pay 60 bucks? When for a few more dollars you can buy the real thing. Or a proper frame from Blackout or QAV. But, I paid I think this one was 30 bucks. I got another one for 28 bucks, and the other one I bought was $42 because I wanted to try 3 different suppliers and see if they're advertised as different items. I wanted to see if they were the same frame and which suppliers actually supplied me. You got better value for the more money you paid. And you don't, they're all the same. So I'll put a list of the eBay vendors I've used and what I think of them in the description of this video. Suffice to say that the most expensive one took the longest time to arrive. So I wouldn't bother with them. The other one, I bought 2 frames off them now, and they seem to be quite good. They seem to ship quite reasonably. So that's pretty good. As I say, we'll wait till the flight video before I say hit the buy button. In the meantime, if you want to be sure, if you can't wait, then just go and buy a QAV or a Blackout. They're well proven. They fly incredibly well, and you will not be disappointed. In the meantime, China, we'll wait and see. Thanks for watching. If you've got questions, put them on the bottom of this video. If you've got any comments, do the same. I'll do my best to read everything and answer whatever comes up. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Now I've got to get back to the bench. And just a footnote for the people that have been asking, will the Blackout fit in the QAV 250 case? No, it won't. Well, it'll fit in the case, but it's not going to fit in the cutout because, as I said, the geometries of these various multi-rotors are actually quite different. So that's not going to fit in there. Nope, never mind. I'm sure, actually, I wonder if they have it. They may have another cutout for the Blackout because they do sell a Blackout at Get FPV.
you might want to go and ask them.
And if you want to know whether the Chinese quad will fit in there, well, as I said, the geometry is different. No, that won't even fit in the plastic because it's too wide. No, never going to fit in there. It's simply, it catches on the plastic on the edge, so even a different cutout wouldn't make any difference. That Chinese knockoff is never going to fit in that QAV 250 box.